I'm going to begin by saying I think that, well, I recognize the reason that you're asking the question, because I do think that certainly, folks on both sides of the aisle can engage in what I might consider to be performative politics instead of effective governance. The one place where there is not weaponization of government shutdowns is really on the Democratic side of the aisle. I'm very proud to be very bipartisan. I'm very proud to work across party lines on issues that matter. I'm also very proud of the fact that I have yet to see anyone on the Democratic side of the aisle ever try and weaponize or attempt to see a government shutdown. The very true reality is that there are some folks on the other side of the aisle who have spent so long impugning the government or so long criticizing the government that they have created a reality where they don't necessarily think that shutting down the government matters, right? That their constituents wouldn't be hurt if the government were shut down. And that is really part of the challenge. What I would like to see in terms of how we actually get away from the weaponization, or even if it's not a weaponized in a political sense, the very reality that we even have risks of government shutdown. I think it is kind of, let me just tell you some of the things that happen structurally, right? So right now we are already in January of 2024. The federal government's fiscal year ends in September. So we are in fiscal year 2024, fiscal year 2024 ends in September. By the traditional process, we should be doing appropriations for FY25 now. We should be doing appropriations for FY25 now so that those bills can be signed into law by the end of September, thereby funding FY25 before FY25 actually starts. We're still talking about FY24. So we are obviously not on path to be on time for FY25 already, and it is January of 2024. And I'm walking you through, this is sort of the nitty gritty, the process of it. But the reason I'm walking you through this is because there are real just structural fixes to get us away from this circumstance. Because even the threat of a government shutdown hurts the small businesses, hurts the contractors, hurts the federal employees, certainly across Virginia and certainly across the 7th District. Because if you think you're going to go without a paycheck, even though federal employees are going to get theirs eventually, contractors won't, small business owners won't, right? You start to say, okay, I need to make sure that I'm not spending money because I might have to pay rent without a paycheck coming in. I might have to pay my mortgage without rent coming in. I might have to pay daycare without my paycheck coming in. And then so you don't go to the restaurant, you don't go to the store and pick up things for around the house, right? And it impacts our economy in Virginia. We need to be doing appropriations bills on time. By tradition, Congress is typically not in session in the month of August, right? The end of the fiscal year is the end of September. By tradition, we're not here in August. Now, people will like to say recess. I promise you, anytime I'm not on Capitol Hill, I'm across the district, I'm doing work. I'm not saying that members of Congress are not working in August, because I know I work a lot in August across the district, doing events and visiting with people and seeing businesses, et cetera. But things change. If we are not going to get our appropriations bills done, if we haven't passed them out of committee by June and July, then perhaps we rethink a month back home in our districts. Maybe we save that for October. After we've actually funded the government for the next fiscal year. So there are structural elements to the way this place works that, with the kind of back and forth fighting over funding the government and over appropriations, that I think structurally creates problems. I've been in conversations with some of my colleagues across the aisle about even the thought of doing 2-year appropriations. Some of the things that people will say, and I was talking with some of the Freedom Caucus folks about this, right? And at times, some of the Freedom Caucus folks are the biggest problems when it comes to funding the government. But thinking through, what does it look like to avoid this yearly challenge when is it not perhaps more cost effective even to fund a government agency to tell DOD, this is the money you are getting for FY24 and FY25. From a budgetary standpoint, is there not better continuity in that? And then from a Capitol Hill standpoint, we get that done. And then the next Congress, you do it again. And the next Congress, you do it again, right? Every 2 years. So I have spent a lot of time engaging with colleagues on what the fixes are. Do we change the calendar? Do we change the way we do appropriations? I have not arrived at a successful effort to kind of upend the system that is not working. But I will say that when we are careening back and forth towards potential government shutdowns all along the way, it just hurts people. It hurts the economy. I have been a former federal employee. I was a CIA officer at a station abroad. We were facing a potential government shutdown, and we went around in a circle and had to say what we were working on to determine, who would be essential or who would be non-essential. Literally, as a CIA officer working terrorism cases, we sat there and said, okay, well, I'm working this terrorism case. Well, I'm working this XYZ case. I'm working this case. In the end, we were all essential based on the work we were doing. But the fact that we even wasted an hour doing that because, Congress back in Washington was fighting over this or that or not prioritizing doing their job on time. When I was accounting for dollars I was spending as a federal employee, I sure had to do that on time. I think that the problem is that, I think no budget, no pay. I have been engaged on all of the things. We don't get our appropriations done on time. We don't get paid. That's a way to incentivize members of Congress because, and I will leave you with this because certainly I could talk about it far too long. When there are government shutdowns, members of Congress still get paid. It is the absolutely most ridiculous reality in this whole mess is that the government could shut down, every few weeks and members of Congress would never be impacted. Certainly, I lead legislation and I have since I first got to Congress to change that. In the event of a government shutdown, members of Congress don't get paid. I think members of Congress and their staffs, our staffs shouldn't get paid because certainly that is a way to impact if everyone looking at you is saying you did this and I'm not sure how I'm going to pay my child's daycare bill. Perhaps that makes it deeply personal. But that is a reality that exists that even when there are government shutdowns, members of Congress get paid. I think it's atrocious and horrible. And I am trying to change that as well as make a system that is currently not optimally working actually just work. So I hear you. I think I've probably just identified more problems in the system, but elements of how we can try and improve it. Certainly, I hope you know that I'm thinking about this and digging deep on the issue because it is it's just unacceptable that we careen from potential shutdown to potential shutdown.